You're listening to episode 163 of Present Moment. Welcome to Present Moment, Mindfulness, Practice, and Science. I'm Ted Meissner. Present Moment is a podcast with interviews, conversations, and roundtable discussions. We speak with mindfulness researchers about their newest findings published in peer-reviewed science journals, teachers about their understanding and methods as they work with students of mindfulness, authors about their books and interests, and we also speak with everyday practitioners. The website presentmomentmindfulness.com has show notes for each episode along with resource materials. Frits Koster joins us to speak about mindfulness-based compassionate living. If you're listening to this podcast and find value and insights from what is shared here, know that this can only be sustained with your generosity. Please take a moment, go to presentmomentmindfulness.com, and make a donation if you value these conversations, which can't continue without your contributions. Thank you for your help and your support. Compassion as the practice of intentional care for those in distress is a very wide and deep topic. Whether that takes the form of self-care or care for others, there are ways in which mindfulness can inform and grow compassion to be an integral aspect of how one's life is lived in every moment. Frits Koster is a Vipassana meditation teacher, certified mindfulness teacher, and healthcare professional. He has taught mindfulness and compassion in healthcare settings for many years. He studied Buddhist psychology for 6 years as a monk in Southeast Asia. The author of several books, Frits trains mindfulness teachers across Europe at the Institute for Mindfulness-Based Approaches. Our guest today is Frits Koster. Frits, welcome to the podcast. Nice to meet you. Glad to have you here.
Thank you.
So let's get started by having you tell us a bit about yourself.
Okay, well, maybe first of all to say it's an honor to be able to share some things in this way. And well, about myself, well, I'm about a little bit more than 60 years old, and I feel I've been very privileged that I was very young when I met mindfulness. The word mindfulness wasn't familiar in Holland at all at that time, about 40 years ago or so. But somehow I met a Thai meditation teacher, and I was quite confused in that time. I could study in university, but I really didn't know what I wanted to do with my life, and I would do a lot of unhealthy things to entertain myself, but just sort of hang around and maybe feeling depressed about living in general. And this Thai teacher, a Thai monk, he offered mindfulness meditation, but then it was called Vipassana meditation. And this was really like, for the first time since many years, I felt something deep was touched upon. Like I found it very difficult to practice, but I really felt, oh, this is something that I would really continue with. This is really a very open way in which I can study and understand myself and the world much better. So I started practicing in a very strict manner, I can say. And first a few years in Holland, because I had to do a sort of a service, because I didn't want to go into the military. Then I had to do social service, and that would take some years. And knowing I would start a study in psychology after half a year, I had half a year time to travel. And so I went to travel in Asia and did a longer retreat with a sponsorship letter of my Thai teacher in Thailand. But then after those few months, I really felt I'm actually just beginning. And then after some hesitating, then I couldn't make a decision. But then suddenly I got a letter from Bangkok in that meditation center in Thailand where it was offered to me to become a novice monk. That there was a senior teacher and he had organized this. Then I thought, well, I can do that for 1 year and then I can still pick up the study. But then having ordained as a novice monk, and then I still felt after 1 year, oh, I want to stay longer. So I've stayed altogether about 6 years in Southeast Asia. And practicing meditation and studying Abhidhamma Buddhist psychology in different countries, and learning to teach myself at a certain moment. And then after those 6 years, then my Thai teacher, Metta Vihari, he came back, or he visited me, and he asked me to come back. And that was very good for me. I didn't really want to go back at all, because I was really very much in a safe cocoon, you call it maybe in English. But in a very safe place. But I felt it's good to go back. And you have this word like that people get hospitalized when, for example, some older people, when they are suddenly taken into the hospital, then they feel so much at ease there that they don't want to go out anymore, even when they're healthy. And in the same way, I may have become monastery-ized, something like that. So it was very good for me to go out. But coming back in the Netherlands as a monk was also not quite easy, because the culture is totally not connected with Buddhism and Buddhist monks. And after a few years, I really felt it's healthy for me to disrobe. I also started to feel, falling in love more often. And it was really like, I felt really like, well, I can't follow that as a monk. And I had never really had a clear relationship in my life before. I was still very young. So then at a certain moment, I decided to disrobe, which was also very healthy for me. Well, I started working in mental health care. I was too old to study. I was about 35 years old or something like that at the time. So I decided to follow a training to become a psychiatric nurse, and I could learn and work. And it was something peculiar because in the beginning, when I worked as a psychiatric nurse in all kind of ways, like then sometimes I shared something to a psychiatrist, for example, about the possible value of mindfulness practice. And then the psychiatrists or the doctors, they really thought, this is a freak, we need to take care. So I didn't speak much about it. But in the meanwhile, by that John Kabat-Zinn, the MBSR and MBCT became known, then I can really modestly say that I've become quite popular in that domain, that it's really, that mindfulness has really become mainstream also in mental health care now. And I'm very glad about it also. So I don't work as a psychiatric nurse anymore, even though I'm still connected to working in psychiatry. Mm-hmm. But now especially as a mindfulness teacher and trainer and advisor or a compassion teacher, trainer like that. And besides, well, that we started to grow plans for an extra support, but I'll refer to that a bit later maybe.
Okay.
But it's about my life, and yeah, I can say that I live in a nice village in the north of Holland, and yeah, I'm very happily married with my wife Yeti. We often teach together also, like retreats, and yeah, but that we do all kind of things in the field of mindfulness and compassion.
Wonderful. Thank you for that overview. And it's interesting you bringing up what it was like a long time ago, wanting to bring mindfulness into mental health field, and what the attitudes were then and how things have changed so much, especially lately. And I'm curious what it's been like for you over the years to see this thing that is so important to you in your own life, and how you've seen it help people now gaining the acceptance in mental health care. What has that been like for you?
Well, very, very directly already. You may have noticed that my language is not always very fluent, that I'm also stuttering a bit. And when I was young, I would stutter much more. And I would really feel bad about it also. Mm. And I noticed by developing mindfulness and also developing the gentle touch in being mindful, what a huge shift it has been only for me already, that I can be with a little handicap, but I don't suffer from it so much. Maybe you suffer as a listener, but I don't suffer so much from it, at least.
Not at all, actually. Thank you for that. So I also want us to shift now into our main topic today, which is mindfulness-based compassionate living, which is a program that I want to learn more about. And I have one of the books, there are a couple of books on this here, but I'm wondering if you might tell the background, the story of how you and Eric van den Brink, you focus on compassion in this program. How did that get started?
Yes, well, it started maybe in 2007 or so, that Eric, who works as a psychiatrist in Groningen, a big city here, he asked me to join his team. They were having quite an interesting center for integrative psychiatry, which was quite new at that time also. It's still quite new. And he knew I was working with mindfulness in another psychiatric clinic already. And he asked me to join his team, to support his team. And we started teaching together more. And we would teach programs for mental health care workers and programs for clients. But then, of course, we started sharing a lot. And we both felt we could see that, especially for clients, that they would often be very much touched by the MBSR, MBCT programs. And but we could also see then that for many, it would be difficult to maintain with practicing mindfulness after that 8-week program. And we also, well, and then we thought it would be good to offer them something as an extra support. And then we both agreed very easily that it should be the quality of mildness, kindness, that should be touched more. Because I don't want to literally say, but if somebody mentions in the family, for example, or at work that he or she has a form of cancer, then everybody understands immediately, and everybody is very compassionate and full understanding. People get flowers and support from work and so forth. But if one comes home or at work and says, oh, I'm suffering from depression, or I'm suffering from burnout, or I have this fear issue that I can't deal with well. Some people will understand, but many just understand it a bit. So especially for this group, it's much more difficult to maintain a sort of a kindness to themselves. And then we decided it should be the quality of kindness that should be the central theme in this follow-up program that we made. And then Eric met Paul Gilbert, and of course I also started doing things with Paul. Paul Gilbert, who was maybe the first European psychologist who really brought compassion to the center of treatment in mental health care. Well, I got contact with Buddhist background where kindness and compassionate practice are there, and we started gathering all things together. Sometimes Eric brought something in, sometimes I. We didn't invent so much ourselves. Just as John Kabat-Zinn didn't invent so much, but he very intelligently brought things together. And in the same from the East and the West. And in the same way, we were trying to do that with compassion. And well, it should have a name. So we called it Mindfulness-Based Compassionate Living. That sounds good. And well, we started offering it in mental health care to clients. And throughout the years, like the program would, or that we would adapt things in years, and it's still not, it's always in movement still, but the last years it's more at peace, I can say, just little things that we change. But we started teaching this MBCL course also to mental health care workers, professionals, doctors, psychologists, coaches, anybody who would work with other people. And we could see, we didn't see so much difference actually with what you would call client groups. Maybe with the group of clients in mental health care, there would be more extra vulnerability, but also for the professionals, they would need just as much kindness and compassion themselves to not get into burnout issues, for example. So and eventually the program also shifted to also spread towards outside of the domain of the healthcare, and it's also offered more in a regular way, for example, in many countries in Europe.
So tell us about the program itself. Who is it for? And maybe what makes it different than other mindfulness compassion-based courses?
Yeah, it is, I would say it's for anybody who is familiar with mindfulness practice and who wishes to deepen their practice with the quality of kindness. And it can be, for some, most, I would say, they have a difficulty being kind with themselves. I'm not sure, Europe, the USA, I've never been there yet, unfortunately. But I've been living with American friends in Burma and Thailand, and I would say, I guess in the United States that's quite similar, where if you where we speak about being kind to ourselves, for many Western people it's not easy, and for some there may also be issues suffering from issues in the field of forgivingness, for example, where they, but often also underlying again a lack of kindness to themselves. And I would say that the MBCL is suitable for anybody who feels the need for more heartfulness or kindfulness, they call nowadays, in their life. Your second question. It was funny when we started designing the MBCL program. In the beginning, we really thought, oh, we're the only ones who do this in the world. But then soon we found out that Christopher Germer and Kristin Neff were a little bit like a brother and sister, like in this field. That at the same time that they started developing a program, and maybe that Eric and I, we had a program a bit earlier than they had, and they had their books a bit earlier than we. But we started growing in the same time, and there would be other lovely programs too that would grow in that time. So it was just like as if something globally was awakened, and that we were not the only ones. And I would say all these programs, they're wonderful. What makes the MBCL, what is specific for the MBCL maybe, is that we really designed it as a follow-up program. Like most of the other programs, that one doesn't need to be familiar so much with mindfulness. It's nowadays it's recommended more often, but we really choose to have mindfulness as a prerequisite, and it can be having followed an MBSR course or an MBCT course, or breathworks, for example, or sometimes somebody wants to participate with, for example, 5 or 10 years just mindfulness practice from a wisdom tradition, like a Buddhist tradition. But still, we would still support a person. Well, that's wonderful. Yeah, you can join, but we can recommend you to follow an MBSR or MBCT course first.
Yeah, because it is, I like that recognition, because that is different than what you might have had in other settings. It certainly was for me, coming from a Zen and then Theravada background into MBSR. And that was a very helpful experience. And as you mentioned, at the conclusion of a course like that, there's often a now what? And providing something for people to focus on to deepen their practice is wonderful to see. And so I'm wondering what you have found most helpful for participants, or what you're most pleased with about the program. What do you like best about it?
Yeah, something that I'm very pleased about is the holding. And that may also be the reason why we really designed it as a follow-up program. That practicing compassion, it sounds so nice. And in the glossy magazines, you would have such a beautifully photoshopped young lady with a beautiful, perfect line, white clothes, lovely skin, radiant smile, sitting on the top of a mountain with the blue sky and the rainbow. Yeah, I'm doing self-compassion. I notice in reality it doesn't always look like that. And it's actually quite, it asks a lot from people. I remember from myself when I started doing just loving kindness practice in Asia. Oh, it was really a very hard practice. And what I appreciate in the MBCL is that we really consider familiarity with mindfulness as a sort of a safe holding. That because starting to bringing warmth to all kind of issues in our life. That also touches upon a lot of resistance, fear, difficulties, sadness, and I notice it's then very helpful that we really offer it in the same way that participants can always go back to just sitting with mindfulness. They're familiar with that they don't need to continue, that they can take their own space in this. And I feel that's something that I appreciate very much in this program. And that makes it much more accessible for many. Yeah.
What are some of the biggest or most common difficulties people have when they first start the program?
Depending, of course, on the background. That, for example, for participants who are not so grown up with safeness around,
Mm-hmm.
and then, like, often just to practice a safe place that we offer in session 1, it can touch upon a lot of difficulty already. That it's like maybe to summarize your question, that a lot of grief starts to grow there, because participants start to feel what they have been missing, and it can be due to all different reasons, but that this is happening a lot, like starting to grow self-compassion. It brings a lot of tears, and one of the important things is really, I feel, in teaching compassion, is to really address it also, that's not something that one should overcome to start practicing compassion, but that one actually, compassion may start already to compassionately relate to the sadness and to the resistance that may arise there also, and that it really may be a part of the practice to integrate that in the practice. Yeah.
And you've directly built that into the book. One of the exercises I was reviewing just this morning on the practical guide is a yes-no practice. And this has to do with mindfully seeing and noticing where there is hurt, where there is difficulty, and not turning away, which prevents us from being able to work with it and process it. And so thank you for putting in that direct facing of difficulties as being part of this too, as being a compassionate way to meet the hurts that do exist. So what do you think for participants is one of the most important things they get out of it? Or what are some things that you have seen over the years that have been very helpful to people in the program?
Well, there has been research. We've been a bit unfortunate that the research is there already, but it takes some time to have it published. But from the research, it shows, it says, and I can see that in groups, at least 2 valuable things. And then I speak about very general effects of the training. That one is that it really shows that people eventually that they start to become kinder to themselves, and also kinder to others, because the program is not only on self-compassion, that they're also, especially in the second half of the program, more practices also how we can grow compassion to others also. But that's one effect that I can really see, and that people really that often they really go through how would you call that in English? Through something deep during the training.
Right.
Like just like with the MBSR that people, or the MBCT that people start with, oh, this is wonderful, and then in session 3 and 4, oh, that they start to feel heavy, because they get more confronted with difficulties. In the MBCL, it shows even a bit more, and that people can really have a hard time with practicing and continuing, and oh yeah, like relating to that in many different ways. Oh yeah, that I can really say that most, like in the end of the course, that they really appreciate it. That they say it was not an easy journey, but it was really worthwhile. And especially in psychiatry, a bit more still than in open groups. But in psychiatry, I've been working with clients who would really have severe issues on trauma, fear, depression, and they would be very familiar in psychiatry with all kind of diagnoses with which they are labeled and with which they identify themselves. But that by becoming familiar with mindfulness practice, they already feel much more, oh, this is not really so much about my disease or my limitation, but much more, oh, it's about humanity. And that they really appreciate that from the MBCL also, that it's really about, oh yeah, humanity and dignity in vulnerability.
Thank you for that. So for those who are listening and would like more information, on the episode page, we'll have a link to a couple of websites for you. One is fritskoster.com, Fritz's own site, and also compassionateliving.info, which shares more about these. Both of them do. And we'll have links to a couple of books on this particular program, Mindfulness-Based Compassionate Living. Our guest today, Frits Koster. Frits, thank you very much for being here.
Thank you. Thank you too.
Thanks for listening. If you'd like to learn more about something you've heard in today's podcast, please come and visit the website at presentmomentmindfulness.com. You'll find an entire webpage devoted to this and every episode. You can comment on the episode page and find show notes and other helpful resources for your mindfulness practice. The shakuhachi music heard on Present Moment is used by permission and through the generosity of musician Rodrigo Rodriguez. His website is linked on the Present Moment website on the About Podcast Music page. Until next time, remember, every moment you have a choice. Make it the best you can. See you next time on Present Moment.